as mentioned, there are many lessons we can learn from Noah and how to survive, not just the flood then, but the floods of today. But I want to focus really today on three major lessons that I think are very relevant to our day and age, to our circumstances, to the world's circumstances in general. So let's get right to it and go to lesson number 1. This comes from this verse in Genesis 6:14 of God's commandment, telling Moses to make for yourself, telling Noach, not Moses, to make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with compartments, and you shall caulk it both inside and outside with pitch. So God gave strict instructions to Noach of not just how to build this ark, but also who should build this ark. And as Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, who was really one of the luminaries of Jewish history, who lived in the 1400s and suffered terribly in the late 1300s and 1400s, suffered terribly from persecution, although he had fame and power at one point and wealth. But he has a beautiful commentary on the Torah, and he asks the simple question here: what does it mean that God told Noach to make for yourself? This ark was anything but for Noach himself. It was for everyone. It was supposed to be for humanity. Noach was supposed to go and save humanity, and then hopefully those who needed to be punished with the flood will be punished, but he should save as many people as possible. It should be for his wife, for his children, for his in-laws. Every species of animals, insects, and birds were in that ark. Well, not just for Noach, and hopefully for many more too. He was not constructing it for himself. So why does God tell Noach, make for yourself an ark? What does the Torah not simply state? Make an ark. And he answers very powerfully. The answer is that God was telling Noach not just make the ark by yourself. Was telling Noach, make the ark by yourself. Not just for yourself, but also by yourself. In Hebrew, that translation, I think, comes through almost automatically. But when God tells him to build a teva, aseh lecha tevat etzat gofer, aseh lecha, which can also be interpreted as make this ark all by yourself. Now, of course, why couldn't Noach delegate this? I mean, any average Jewish man like myself, for example, doesn't even know how to hammer a nail in the wall. How can God expect Noach to build this ark all by himself when he could have very easily delegated it to a good construction company of his time? That would be much easier. What's the point? And the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I think, shares here lesson number 1, which is so powerful and especially so relevant. And that is that why would God, you know what, why doesn't someone else read this? The Lubavitcher Rebbe Sichot Kodesh. Does anyone want to read this reference here? Why would God tell Noach? Janet, go for it. No, we can't hear you now. Now you're muted. Now you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry. Okay. Why would God tell Noach, make an ark by yourself, if the point is to have an ark to save him and his family from the flood? Who cares who builds it? Why could Noach not enjoin the assistance of others in such a gigantic undertaking? That is because when it comes to saving the world, you do not delegate the work. Sometimes people may say to themselves, I'm a leader, I'm a public figure, I am renowned, I am a celebrity. You want me to start banging nails into boards of wood? I am not a simple schlepper. I am not a simple carpenter. I will issue forth instructions so others can do the work. After all, successful people are those who know how to delegate labor. Right. Comes the Torah and imparts a vital lesson. You may be the greatest of great, but when saving the world is at stake, you've got to lift up your pants, get your feet dirty, and get to work.
Right. Beautiful words by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in a Farbrengen that he gave in 5736 or in 1976. But they ring so true because we are unfortunately facing a broken world. The world is filled and rampant with pain and suffering. And very often we say to ourselves, okay, let's complain about it on Facebook. Let's surround ourselves with only good people because we can't deal with these problems. Don't make, there's a sentence that I once heard from someone to someone else, which is just a terrible sentence. Don't make your problems my problems. Or conversely, some other people decide to then just close themselves just among their families or inside their homes and not deal at all with the world. Let's seclude ourselves, some people say. And here, Noach, of course, God's instruction to Noach, and Noach and then executed it. But Noach is teaching us, no, that when it comes to saving the world, you may be the VIP of VIPs. You may be the celebrity of celebrities, but it's still upon you to go and save the world. Go and roll up your sleeves, lift up your pants, as he says here, get your feet dirty and get to work. Everyone has the responsibility of saving the part of the world that they were given, that they are responsible for. That's what Noach teaches us. And again, I think it's such a relevant lesson because we do face so many people suffering. And instead of complaining about it or secluding ourselves, what we should really be doing is reaching out ourselves. Yes, we might think, well, they're strangers. I don't really get along with them. I don't really like them. It doesn't matter. God put that situation in front of you. You do it now and here. This is why there's a biblical commandment that says, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. You know, it's one of the great differences between Israeli law and Jewish law in general, but it's the law right now in the state of Israel, and American law. In American law, there's a law called the Good Samaritan. What is the law of the Good Samaritan? That is that if you see someone in pain or someone in front of you falling, for example, and you go and help them, and by helping them, say you broke their arm because you tried to lift them up and you broke their arm, but you at the same time saved them from a car that was driving at 100 miles per hour, and you left them from the street, you saved their lives, but in the process you broke their arm. That person can't sue you for breaking their arm. Why? Because it's the Good Samaritan law, from at least the way I understand it. You did what you did as a Good Samaritan. You helped them, so they can't sue you. Now, does American law tell you that you have to go out to the street and save that person? No. But if you choose to do that, then that person can't sue you if you did something wrong in the process unintentionally. In Jewish law, and yes, in the Israeli law as it stands right now in the state of Israel, not only can you decide, do you have that freedom of choice of deciding whether you should save them or not save them, but it's an obligation. You have to save them. In fact, that person can then, if he's saved by some other way, he can then sue you for being so passive. It is your responsibility to go out to the street and pull that person. You don't have the freedom of choice to decide saying, oh, well, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be a Good Samaritan. In America, if you choose not to be a Good Samaritan, no one can hold this against you. In Israel, they could. In Jewish law, they could. Why? Because it's based on this idea that when you see something wrong, then it's your responsibility to correct that wrong. When you see pain, it's your responsibility to heal it. When you see suffering, it's your responsibility to lift that spirit. That is the Jewish mantra as communicated by God to Noach. You know, I once heard from Rabbi Steinsaltz, but it's an interesting question. Think about it this way. Why is it? And maybe someone here is the answer. Rabbi Steinsaltz offered a different answer. But why is it that when we need to, God forbid, have surgery, we have to research who the surgeon is, how many surgeries he did, what type of human being he is or she is, and know everything about that surgeon that there is to know. While when we board a plane, remember those days when we boarded planes? So when we board a plane, we couldn't care less who the pilot is. At the end of the day, the surgeon and the pilot are both responsible for your life. So why do your homework when for a surgeon and not do your homework for that pilot? What if that pilot is drunk? What if the pilot doesn't know what he's doing? What if he's fake? Like Catch Me If You Can. Like Frank Abagnale, right? Played by Leonardo DiCaprio in that Steven Spielberg movie. What if he's completely incompetent? Why aren't you doing your homework? They're both responsible for your life. Does anyone have an answer for that? Then I'll offer Rabbi Steinsaltz's answer. Anyone? You can guess. Yes, Julie, please.
You have some control over who the doctor is. You have no control over who the pilot is.
Okay, fine. So okay, good point. So then, let's say you fly private, and you don't really care about who the pilot is. You have control over the pilot is. But it's a good point. Maybe it's because just we have no control and we can't be thinking about it. But we have the right to say, well, I want to know who the pilot is. I think the answer, as Rabbi Strauss put it, is because if the surgeon messes up, God forbid, his surgery is unsuccessful, he goes home, puts up his feet on his couch and drinks a beer, and life continues for him. And he doesn't have that level of investment, of involvement, of engagement that the pilot has, because if the pilot messes up, he goes down with you. So when you know, subconsciously or consciously, when you know that the pilot is so invested that if he messes up, it's not just your life, but it's also his life going to be affected, then somehow that gives you the sense of calmness, of tranquility. All right, now I can go on this plane. But the surgeon, it's not the case. Surgeon, you want to know that he's the top surgeon in your city. Why? Because at the end of the day, he doesn't have the same level of engagement, investment, responsibility that the pilot has. Stans was asking this question because he was telling us as students that we have to choose to be pilots in life, not doctors. In that sense, of course. I mean, if one wants to become a doctor, you can become a doctor, officially speaking. But in an essential sense, that when we see pain, and this is the message, shouting from the Lubavitch Rebbe's words here, that when we see pain, when we see a wrong in the world, we have to react like pilots. We have to be so invested that we roll up our sleeves and we go and save the world, no matter what we are, who we think we are. It's our responsibility. God put that in front of our eyes. That's lesson number one.
Rabbi?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's assume that you think that way, but maybe your thinking isn't completely helpful. So you go off and you're going to save the world based on your sense of reality, which may not be in the best interest of everybody. Then what?
Right. I mean, you have to know what you're doing.
Well, how do you know that, though?
Okay. Well, sometimes it's very clear. Sometimes, someone needs a phone call. You need to cheer that person's spirit. So that's quite simple.
That's easy.
If you don't know, then you have to try and know before you do what you have to do. And try and find out, ask experts, ask people. The
So do research, right? You do your research and make sure that you're going down the right path.
Absolutely, but don't let your research also be an excuse. Be honest with yourself, right? Very often people say, well, I have to research it. No, I'm incompetent. I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
So then go learn how to deal with this. The same Lubavitch Rebbe will speak about assimilation in this context. And he would tell people, how can you sit and study Torah all day long when there are Jews being assimilated, Jews drowning in the sea of assimilation? And he would give the analogy of a fire. When there's a fire in a home, you don't start saying, well, let me research how to exactly deal with fires and how to extinguish fires and so on. What you do the best you can. You go and you jump in and you pour as many buckets of water as you can. You do what you can. Yes, it would be better research, but sometimes the situation is so urgent that we don't have time for research. And that's why research can sometimes be a good excuse, but it's the worst excuse, because in the meantime, people are burning. So you have to be careful with that.
Rabbi, I just wanted to say now that there's an interesting example what's going on. One of the I think Hamas or whatever has COVID, one of the people that wants Israel's destruction. And he's actually being treated in Israel for his COVID. And I know people are very upset because here he is, he's like the #1 enemy of Israel. And yet Israel took him in and is treating him for COVID. So I think that's a good example.
No, absolutely. No, it's a great example. He's from the Fatah, Saib Arikat. Yes. That's right. You have to do what you have to do. I think a better example and the ultimate example of our century, of course, is Chioni Saguara. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But it's that Japanese ambassador to Lithuania. We all know the story that was sent in 1938 to Lithuania to establish a Japanese embassy. And on September 1st, 1939, the war begins and Hitler starts to fill Europe with his evil and destruction. And he's facing hundreds of refugees knocking on his door saying, give us visas. Let us flee to Japan. He asked his superiors in Japan 3 times, sent them telegrams, no response. And they denied his request at one point. And Sugawara would not let that get to him. And he said, if that's the case, I'll issue their visas. And he started issuing visas from July, I don't remember the exact dates, but July 1940 to the end of August 28th, I think, till 1940, for more than 30 days. And he issued some 6,000 visas, not just to individuals, but to families. And he issued visas against the orders of his superiors, to the point that they decided, because of him, to close the embassy and to arrest him. As he was being arrested and evicted from the embassy, they put him on a train, and the image of the survivors still is so vivid. He was giving out visas from the window of his train, visas to people not incessantly working on saving Jews. Altogether, he saved 30,000 Jews, but as we know, in every Jew, there are millions of Jews that are potentially born. So he really saved millions of Jews. Today, there are about 200,000, that's the number they put, about 200,000 Jews in the world that are alive because of Sugawara. He, as a man, who understood, yes, maybe it's not in my power to do what I would want to do, but I'll do it anyway. And I'm not going to waste time. And he worked on it day and night, writing with his own handwriting these visas, eventually saving again 200,000 Jews. And that's what we know of. Of course, potentially so many more, millions more. That's the ultimate example. Not a Jew. Japanese, he was arrested for his efforts. He was punished for his efforts. But he did it because of this tremendous sense of responsibility, this pilot type of responsibility. Really, that's what we should be doing. I mean, thank God we are not facing a Hitler, or we're not facing anything close to a Second World War, or anything close to the Holocaust. So even more, it should be even more simple, even more smooth and easy to save people. So let's get to work. Let's lift up our pants, get our feet dirty, and get to work. That's what this lesson here is shouting. This lesson from Noah. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 speaks of what has become the symbol of peace, which is the olive branch, as we all know. It's interesting because, it has been the symbol of peace now for 5,000 years. It's fascinating because it's not just the symbol of peace in Judaism, even though the symbol of peace, as we'll soon read, stems from the Torah. But in Greek mythology, it was a symbol of peace. Romans, when they would be defeated as a sign of peace, saying, okay, we want to make war with our enemy, they would flip an olive branch. And it's been a symbol of peace in Christianity too, and many other segments of society throughout history. But the symbol of peace really comes also from this week's portion, from the story of the flood. As we know, after the flood, after rain, Noach wanted to see if the earth was habitable again, whether he could come out of the ark. And he sent first a raven, and that didn't work. Then he sent a dove. And the dove eventually came back with a fresh olive branch. Noach got the message, and he said, oh, that means olive trees are growing again. Earth is probably safe to re-inhabit. Let's go out of the ark. He waited for God to give him that instruction. Semina Teva, he came out of the ark and inhabited the world. But this is what the verse says about this olive branch, the symbol of peace. Does anyone want to read Genesis 8? Please, Julie, go for it.
As he waited yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark, and the dove came to him at eventide, and behold, in her mouth an olive leaf freshly plucked. So Noach knew that the waters were abated from the earth. Right.
Okay. So an olive leaf freshly plucked. And it's important to know that it was freshly plucked because it could have been an olive leaf floating on the waters for many, many days and weeks. The fact that it was freshly plucked means that Noach knew that this is from a fresh tree that just grew now. So in any case, this became a symbol of peace. But the big question is, as the Lubavitcher Rebbe again asks, yet another insight from this great man. But why is it important to know that it was an olive branch? the Torah could have just said, well, the dove brought back a branch. That's it. Why point out that it's an olive branch? Let's ask the question and let's answer with these 5 incredible insights here. Does anyone want to read? Why was the leaf?
I'll keep reading.
Please, Julie, go for it.
Why was the leaf that was brought back from an olive branch? Why did the dove choose this tree? And even if she did, for whatever random reason, why does the Torah emphasize this detail? Who cares what type of leaf she brought back to the ark? The answer speaks to all that the olive tree has to teach us on how we can survive the floods of the world. Here are 5 essential ingredients of the olive tree.
Right. So he speaks to the olive tree itself. This is a botanic lesson, ladies and gentlemen. But it's a botanic lesson. It teaches us volumes about how to live life. So number 1, the olive tree. And let's continue, Julie. You're doing such a great job. Why not? Number 1, indestructible.
Indestructible. The root system of the olive tree is so robust that it's capable of regenerating itself even when the above ground structure of the tree is destroyed by frost, fire, or disease. In Tuscany in 1985, a severe frost destroyed many productive and aged olive trees, ruining the livelihoods of many farmers. However, when new shoots appeared in the spring and the dead wood was removed, they soon became new fruit-producing trees.
Right. So let's stop here because I think the lesson is so valuable. Yes, people, diseases, challenges can destroy the outside, can destroy the branches, can destroy the leaves. But if we are anchored in our values, if we are steeped in our roots, if we are connected to what is truly worthy in life, then those roots, like the olive tree, then nothing can destroy us. Then we become indestructible as the olive tree. That's really the lesson. You know, it's interesting to note, but the Talmud says, which means that a person should be as flexible as a bamboo stick and not as difficult as a cedar tree. What does that mean? Cedar tree doesn't have deep roots. And therefore, as strong and as mighty as it may seem, when a storm comes, especially a hurricane comes, then the cedar tree falls down, it collapses, and it dies. A bamboo stick, on the other hand, it might not seem as mighty and as strong as a cedar tree, but it has deep roots. And therefore, even when a hurricane comes, it might knock it up a little bit, but eventually it stays strong and it's indestructible. I think the lesson in all of this is very powerful. Is that I'm going to mute all. And please unmute yourself if you want to say something. I'm just muting all because of the background noise. But I think the lesson again is that we have to ask ourselves, is there value that is anchoring me? That for it, I'll give my life away. Is there something that is worth it all? A value that I'm so dedicated to that will never leave me. That the world can collapse, but I'll still stick to it. Are there people? Is my family, do the family members that I have serve as those roots? Are they also forever there and I'm as dedicated to them as could be? Or do I have my heritage, my own traditions, my Judaism, my identity? Is that an anchor for me? And if we're as dedicated to those values, to those traditions, to that identity, Jewish identity, to that family members, as an olive tree is to its roots, then we too become indestructible. That's number 1. Number 2, anyone else? Actually, Julie, why don't you continue if there's no one else? Like we said, go ahead. Unparchable.
Okay. Unparchable. Olive trees are drought friendly and, just like eucalyptus trees, do not need to be watered. In his Innocents Abroad, Mark Twain called the olive tree and the cactus those fast friends of a worthless soil. It's true, olive trees will produce loads of fruit in the cruelest heat and driest gravels of Spain, Portugal, North Africa, the Middle East, and myriad islands in the Mediterranean. Not only that, the trees thrive in places where others may wither, and olives don't only survive, but thrive for century after century.
Right, which is really just miraculous almost. But by the way, we have olive trees. I will add to that list. Spain, Portugal, not I would add Arizona to this list. We have olive trees here. I'm sure as you've noticed, you might have them in your home too. We have olive trees everywhere. Why? Because untouchable also means resilient. They're as resilient as could be. Yes, they could be facing very cruel environments, but they are resilient. They are stronger than them. And in a way, that's what this olive branch teaches us, that if we wish to survive the floods, we too have to develop this inner resilience. We can't allow the outside to define us. We can only be defined by the inside. And then if we are truly connected, as mentioned, to those roots, to those values, then we also develop resilience. I will share just a quick story about Mendel Futerfas. Maybe it's a story I've shared before. Mendel Futerfas was a Hasidic Jew who lived not too long ago, about 30, 40 years ago, that's when he passed. But he was thrown in the gulag by the communists of the Soviet Union just because he was teaching Judaism. And he suffered in Siberia for 20 years. And one day he tells a story, he came out telling many, many stories about his suffering in Siberia. But one of the stories he told is that one day he came out for lunch and he was seated among other inmates, and the inmates began to cry. And he was smiling. And the inmates said to him, "Hey, why are you smiling?" He said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Well, we lost everything. Before we came here, we were successful businessmen and we had everything. Now we have nothing." And then they told Mendel Futerfas, "You must have been a loser before, so you really didn't lose anything, and that's why you're still smiling." Mendel Futerfas said, "No, actually, I was a wealthy businessman. Also, I had a factory that was thriving, and they took that away from me too. But what I truly had before the Gulag is what I have now in the Gulag. Before the Gulag, I was a servant of God. In the Gulag, I'm still a servant of God. So what I truly had, I will always have. And that's the source of my happiness. And therefore, I'm smiling." To use a computer language, we can have many changes in the software, but as long as the hardware remains the same, remains rooted, remains connected, then the resilience is built. And then we too can survive even the cruelest of environments. That's number 2. Number 3, let's continue. Strength.
I'll do it.
Please. Who said that? I didn't.
I did. Mindy.
Oh,
Okay.
Mindy, yes, please.
The wood of the olive tree is exceptionally robust and inflexible, and is a bastion of unwavering strength to the tree as a whole, which created a fascinating Jewish law. If one found a lost shovel, he may use it till the owner comes to claim it, so that it does not get rusty. He may use for soft things, but not for olive trees, since their wood is very strong and might break the shovel. The wood of the olive tree is so strong that any attempt to graft other species of trees onto it will be unsuccessful. It is unapologetic about its strength and residuelessness and rejects any foreign elements.
Right. So this speaks of yet a different type of strength. The resilience is that inner strength that we spoke about. This speaks about the strength that we develop, and the self-respect, I would say, that we develop. And that is that strength that is unapologetic, that we have ideas in Judaism, we have values in Judaism that we don't have to apologize for, that we carry proudly. For example, the fact that we are proud Jews that keep Shabbat. Shabbat is a holy day for us. That's not something we should compromise. Doesn't mean, if tomorrow the government will tell us to whoever will tell us to change it to Sundays, it's not something, something that we're strong about, something that we carry with pride. And there's so many other examples. Judaism is not something to be ashamed about. That's that outer strength. More than the resilient strength, it's that strength that we project. The late Lubavitch Rebbe again would say that it's interesting to see, but that the world respects those who respect themselves, and the world disrespects those who disrespect themselves. When Jews are proud about the Judaism, they command respect. They might not command love. People might not like them, but they'll certainly command respect. I can't tell you how many times, it's not that I walk around proudly with my shoulders boastfully and who knows what. I just walk around with a kippah in the supermarket. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me, I'm wearing kippah, I'm carrying my wife's shopping list and trying to find some carrots. But someone all of a sudden approaches me and says, we love Israel. Wow. we love Jews. You're the chosen people. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. Now, why is that? Why do they have the need to say that when I'm shopping for carrots? I think it's simply because, look, I'm wearing my kippah proudly. I have no shame in this kippah. And I think that evokes respect in the eyes of others. It's one of the great truths of human life. It's true not just in Judaism. If I respect myself as a human being and I carry myself with dignity, then that's the way other people will see me. I think that's why, and it's a whole other discussion, but that's why an overwhelming number of psychologists will tell you that the way you dress is the way you'll be treated. If you dress yourself like a hooligan, then you'll be treated like that. If you dress yourself with dignity, then you'll also be treated like that. Why? Because the strength that you project is the strength that you'll receive from others. That's what we learn from the olive tree. It's so strong, but therefore it's able to also command that respect from others. No shovel can come and break it. And as found in Jewish law, as we just described. So that's yet a different type of strength that we ought to learn from the olive tree or from that olive branch. Number 4. Continue again, unless there's any comments, disagreements, there shouldn't be a monologue. Anyone? Okay, so Mindy, you can continue with number 4. I know a lot of you are muted, so if you try to speak, I couldn't hear you, so all you have to do is unmute yourself.
Okay, generous. Large olive trees produce on average about 400 pounds of olives annually. Older and larger trees can produce more. It's estimated that there are about 865 million olive trees in the world today. The olive tree starts bearing fruit at around 5 years of age, and it does not stop. A tree in Croatia that is radiocarbon dated to be 1600 years old still produces abundant fruit today.
Right, and that's yet another characteristic we ought to learn from the olive tree. That we are what we only own what we give, as Rabbi Steinsaltz so often said. That really, at the end of the day, it's what we gave to the world that we own. What we took, as fancy as our car can be, and our house can be, or our clothing can be, we don't own that forever. When we die, or maybe even after a few years, they get damaged and goodbye. But what we gave stays in the hearts of people forever. And the olive tree doesn't really think too much about itself. Yes, it's strong, but its strength is in order to give. Its resilience is in order to produce fruit. That's really the goal of the olive tree. And so too, the goal of the human being must be to give and give and give and give and give. You know, it's interesting to note, but again, there's a commandment in the Torah, in the portion of Kitisa, in which God commands us to give tzedakah, more particularly to give half a shekel to the temple. And the Torah teaches, God uses the word venatnu, applying to the Jewish people, venatnu, which means and they shall give. The commentaries are quick to point out that the word venatnu, which is that commandment of God to give, to be generous, like the olive tree, venatnu, is one of those words that can be read in both directions. Venatnu, you can read it from right to left, or you can read it also from left to right, the opposite way, in Hebrew at least. Why is that? That's because what you give is what you receive also. The more you give, the more really it builds you, builds your strength as that ultimate olive tree. So being generous also ultimately benefits us. We shouldn't do it for us. We should do it for the other. We should keep in mind that that's what makes the olive tree really survive so many years.
Rabbi, what is that word again?
Venatnu, vav, nun, taf, nun, vav.
Thank you.
Venatnu. It's a word that can be read again in both directions. Okay, and number 5, last but not least. Mindy, well, go ahead, continue.
Okay. The olive does not lose its foliage, and it can grow its fruit, the olive, all year round. So the tree as a whole endures all year, every year, as well as the produce of the tree. The olive enduring all year. We see that the olive tree is literally brimming with life. longevity, and endurance.
Right. It's not affected by the seasons, which is quite amazing. There aren't many fruits like that. There aren't many vegetables like that. The etrog, maybe, a citrus fruit that we just shook on Sukkot, that's a type of tree like that. Not affected by the seasons. So too, the olives are not affected by seasons. They produce their fruits all year long. What does this teach us? It teaches us endurance. It teaches us that what's most important is not those big splashes in life, but it's the nitty-gritty details that we dedicate ourselves to each and every day. I'm so much more impressed by constant love and devotion of couples to one another each and every day than by the big shows of "Will you marry me?" and "Wow, let's celebrate your big birthday," and then they splash it all over Facebook or whatever it may be. That's nice, fine, good, nice big splash. What about the day-to-day? What about your endurance? Because at the end of the day, what builds relationships, what builds life in general, is that endurance. You know, we see this in halachic terms too. Maimonides writes about this quite a bit, and he says that it's better to give a little bit of tzedakah each and every day, of charity each and every day, than give one big check once a year. Why? Because that endurance builds life, builds not just consistency, but ensures that your tree continues to produce its fruits each and every day of the year, regardless of the season. And again, so we see halakhic implications to that. I'll mention what I'm sure I've mentioned in the past. That is that I once asked Rabbi Steinsaltz if he had to condense the big idea of Judaism into one word, what would that one word be? I thought he would say kindness, love, or maybe Torah, or maybe mitzvah. No, what he said was consistency.
Right.
Consistency. Again, it's the nitty-gritty details of life that you dedicated to day in and day out that really build your olive tree. Big splashes come and go. You know, we see that in the sports world, in the entertainment world. You have people that rise to the stage and they become great stars for 5 days or for maybe even 5 months. I remember Jeremy Lin. You remember that name? If you're an NBA fan, and you might remember that name. I remember that name. But he made a huge splash as a point guard for the New York Knicks, it was. And everyone said he's the best point guard today. Is subpar. But again, big splashes are easy to come and go. But it's really the endurance that we show that makes our olive tree the best olive tree there is. Okay, so that's why the olive branch, and that's big idea number 2. Big idea number 3, and we'll conclude with that, really comes from the description of the aftermath of the flood. And this is what it says. Does anyone want to read here? Genesis 9:18-20. Julie, go for it. Please, thank you.
The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard.
Right. So let me ask you a question. It's connected but not connected. Can anyone share with me, and I've asked this question now to many people, can anyone share with me what is their plan after the COVID? What do you want to do the minute someone tells you COVID is over? What are you going to do?
I want to hug everyone, hug my family.
Hug everybody. Okay. And then what are you going to do?
Good one. That's a good one. Hug.
That's a good one.
I want to hug. Get on a plane.
Get on a plane.
Rabbi, what I would do is have Kiddush at CBT. I can hardly wait.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then hug everybody. Of course, I miss everybody.
Amen. Okay, good one. And then after that, what are you going to do? Because that's a one-time.
Go back to Chicago.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to tell you what the answer is that I've received overwhelmingly. Nettie, I want to go on vacation. I want to travel, see the world. I want to take a little break. I feel that the stress was too much. I want to go and travel the world. I want to take a vacation.
Yeah, I want to.
This was a question. Yes, Janet.
I want to just thank God for surviving.
Thank God for surviving. Okay, that's great.
I want to be more grateful.
I want to be more grateful. Okay,
Right.
good. That's a lasting
Right.
action too. Good.
I
So,
want to have my children all over for dinner.
okay. Very good. Excellent. Beautiful. Reconnect the family. That's wonderful. Okay.
I just want to go back to my normal routine.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. That's good. Good. So this question was asked to Noah. Noah also survived the pandemic, much worse pandemic than we are experiencing. A pandemic that destroyed the world. It was called Noah's flood. Now, what did he do after the flood? I can guarantee you that his stress was so much stronger than our stress today. What did he do after the flood? After all, he had to take care, he was stuck in an ark. And not just by himself, but with animals that were asking for his attention 24/7. And with garbage everywhere and with filth. What did he do? Did he say, I'm going to go on vacation? No. Did he say, I'm going to go and take a good smoke? No. What did he do? He went, listen to the words of the verse. Noach, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. What did he do? He said, what the world now experienced destruction, I'm going to respond with construction. It's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about my mission to rebuild the world. He's a man of the soil. That's his mission. So I'm going to actualize my mission and plant a vineyard. That's what he did. Because at the end of the day, Noach understood what life is truly about. Life is about action. It's about our everyday action, building the world, healing humanity, bringing goodness and kindness to mankind. That's what it's about. After experiencing a pandemic, that's when our action is most needed. Noach understood that, and he said, let's go and plant a vineyard, rebuild this destroyed world. And the lesson, I just want to conclude with this big idea here based on Likutei Sichot. Does anyone want to read these final words? The lesson for all of us is vital. Please, Julie.
The lesson for all of us is vital. The reaction to destruction must be construction. The best answer to evil must be goodness. The only response to darkness must be light. And as long as the soul still resides in the body, and as long as the breath of God replenishes our lives at every moment, one must make a positive difference in this world in spite of the many falls and challenges, with more light, more love, and more peace.
Right. You know, yesterday I was at yet another funeral, and it really shocks me each time I attend a funeral that the eulogies, and there were many eulogies yesterday. This was a very special man who had fought in 2 of Israel's wars, who dedicated his life to teaching. He has thousands of students across the world. Yosef Cohen, the father of Yaniv Cohen. Dr. Yaniv Cohen is a children's dentist here in town, member of the shul. But really shocks me each time anew that no eulogies speak about the feelings of a person. Eulogies speak about the actions of a person. That's all they speak about. Why? Because in essence, we understand that we are what we do. Not what we feel, not what we think, not what we imagine. We are what we do. It's our actions that define us. And at the end of the day, those are the actions that will last way after we are gone. And this is what Noach teaches us. He faced destruction. He said, well, it's not about me. It's not about my vacations. It's about what I can do now to rebuild the world. Let me plant a vineyard. And that's the way we should react to. After this pandemic, yes, we can take a little vacation. And certainly you can sponsor a Kiddush at CBT and a family time and be grateful and all the wonderful things you said. But at the end of the day, after all of that, we have to rededicate ourselves to action and more action and more action to rebuild the world that has been so destroyed by this pandemic. That's the only response that Judaism offers. And I will say this, that it's really just amazing because I think of Oskar Schindler. Oskar Schindler is an example I've used too, but Oskar Schindler was not a good man, to say the least. He was a business profiteer, a womanizer. How do we remember him today? By his actions. At the end of the day, dedicating himself to saving thousands of Jews. That's how we remember it. So it doesn't matter how you feel, who you are. What matters is your action. And I want to conclude by galvanizing here as many people as possible. And I know many of you have responded so beautifully and really touches my heart and my deepest self each time I receive an email like that. But I would encourage everyone, encouraging myself too, that we've created a 2,000 mitzvah bank. And the goal is to collect 2,000 mitzvahs in loving memory of Rabbi Steinsaltz, who passed away 2 months ago, is our guiding light, certainly my guiding light, and the way we've built and shaped our congregation, our classes, and everything we do here. And the goal is to collect, again, 2,000 mitzvahs in his loving memory by his first yard site. So I would encourage everyone, as we speak about action being the most important, to pick just one mitzvah that you haven't done yet. And preferably a mitzvah that can be as consistent as possible, like giving tzedakah every day, which is an example mentioned, but it could be anything, truly anything. And add it to the 2,000 mitzvah bank in loving memory of Rabbi Steinsaltz. No doubt that those actions will not just benefit the world and bring much construction when the world has been so destroyed, but it will also serve as our identity and as our legacy for the people that we've touched way after we'll be physically gone after 120 years. Because at the end of the day, as mentioned, we are what we do and nothing else.